Welcome to the Behind the Regs podcast. This is episode 4. Today I'm joined by Aaron Bridges and my co-host Nada. Before we jump into the technical side, Aaron, would you mind giving us a brief introduction on your background, your service, your journey, and what brought you into building control?
Yeah, that's great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure being here. So, I started in the military when I was 16 years old. Um, a lot of my family had been in the military previously, and my cousin currently serving. And being having that exposure, it was ultimately a decision that I made, and I joined the Royal Artillery. I spent just over a decade in the military. I joined at a period where we had high tempo operations with Iraq and Afghanistan. And ultimately, over a 5-year period, it got a little bit too much. And I think it was time to spend more time with the family. And I decided to leave. But where did I go? Well, that was a difficult question at the time. But building control popped up, and that was through family. Currently, my father-in-law and my brother-in-law are both in building control, as is my wife. And they asked me if I wanted to get into this profession, so I did. I made the jump in. Initially, I didn't actually start out as a trainee building control surveyor. I actually started as a training consultant at ADIS Regulatory Services, and I did the energy assessors course. And from there, they were actually stepped into a trainee's position and then made my way up to assistant. Unfortunately, we all know what happened with ADIS, and I was made redundant. And then I joined the local authority, North Yorkshire Building Control Partnership, where I continued to develop as a building control surveyor. I really enjoyed my time at the local authority, but then decided to move on and got into structural warranty, latent defect insurance, where I can continue to develop my technical skills. And at that time, the MD wanted to apply for his approved inspector license. So what I actually did was help him, along with others, to go through the SICA license process. And Alpha Building Control was born. And we were successful after our second attempt to get the license. And from there, after over a year or so, I decided to move on to BB7, where I worked in fire assurance, carrying out FRAEWs and EWS1s. And then after a year there, I decided to come back into building control because I actually really missed the profession, and came back to Alpha, was where I'm now currently as the operations director. So ultimately, that's my career to date.
That's brilliant, Aaron. That's interesting to hear. It was very well put together in a nutshell, to be fair. And some of the questions I had lined up, you might have answered already in that brief, but I wanted to elaborate on them a little bit more, if you could. So, one of those first questions: when you were approaching the end of your service, what were you actually looking for in your next career, without knowing, without having the influence that obviously some of your family members are already in building control? But what was, like, what was what was it that you were actually looking for in that next move?
I think really it's ultimately a sense of purpose, isn't it? You've got to remember, I joined the army at 16. It was a young age to join, and the military got 2 years out of me for free, as they say. So from 16 to 18, you boy service, and then once you're 18, you're into man service. And then from 18, I think I was 28 when I eventually left. So it's a big chunk of my life, that I've spent, serving Queen and country at the time, now King and country. But ultimately, it was that purpose that I wanted to look for. And I think when you leave somewhere where you've been for so long, you can sometimes feel a little lost. Where do I go? What career path do I take? Because all I've known is the military, or I know the military way. I don't know the civilian way. So it was quite a hard choice. But no one falls into building control, and I ultimately didn't know what building control was when it came to me. I didn't have a clue. But when you actually start looking at the role of building control, I think it certainly suits the military way.
So, coming from the military background, what were your expectations of the profession, and how did reality compare once you were in the role?
So I think it was certainly a steep learning curve, from the beginning. I've gone from, as I've said, from a military life into a civilian life. So first I actually had to adopt to what civilian life was actually like on the outside of the military. So that was the first thing that I really needed to understand. And then understanding building control was difficult initially for me, because it was understanding, well, what is the purpose of building control? And I think as time has gone on, I think I've really now started to understand its purpose, what building control is here for. It is for the safety of the public in and around buildings. And what a great sense of purpose that is. And I think that's why I think I fell into it really well. And I fit into it well. And I think military people fit into it because it's that mission, isn't it? You're in the military, you have a mission. What's the mission? Is to serve, the country and defend the country. The mission here is that we're doing public safety. We're making sure that buildings are built to the building regulations. People are safe in and around them. So I think the mission and its purpose fit perfectly. I think you also got to look sort of at, the sort of values and standards that we also have in the military. You drilled in what we call C drills. So it's like courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity, loyalty, and selfless commitment. And I think if you actually look at all them values and standards, that's the very thing building control expects of a registered building inspector. Selfless commitment, integrity, ensuring you're doing the right thing even when no one's looking. So that initial transition, we already had that skills built in for us for the military, and all I'm effectively doing it is changing one hat, my helmet from the military, and putting a hard hat on.
How did you find the transition from the military to civilian life? I know you touched on it briefly, but did you find it a struggle from being very much organized, doing, very structured day to day with the military to then, you wake up and you decide what you want to do? Was that strange for you?
Before you answer that question, Aaron, I just want to say something for the listeners as well. And I think we should have said that right from the start. We need to thank you and commend you for your service to the country and the people. That is something that we need to acknowledge. And I'll let you answer that question. But I thought this is something we need to acknowledge and thank you for it. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good to hear. I think sometimes UK people, we're very reserved, aren't we, in how we, whereas America was very passionate. So no, it's really good. I appreciate that.
Even though I wasn't born and bred here, but still passionate.
I think initially the transition, I didn't find it necessarily hard in the sense because as I already had family in building control, it made that transition easier. So my experience is going to be very different to somebody else's, because you could almost argue that I've effectively stepped from one role into the other straight away, and I probably didn't have as much difficulty. So yeah, I think overall, my experience transitioning was a lot easier than I think some people may find currently.
Do you think could be done to help bring in service leavers into the industry? Obviously, we talk a lot in the industry about a lack of staff, a lack of trained RBIs, and we need to fill these gaps. What can be done to entice service leavers to look at this as a career for them?
Well, I think we all agree awareness straight away is certainly a blocker in my opinion. And I don't think that just sits with just military people as well. I think the building control as a whole, are people really aware of who we are and what we do? I don't think they are. And I think we can certainly improve our awareness of our profession. I mean, if you look at a statistic, the UK defence personnel statistics from 2025, nearly 14,590 people left the military, which over 8,000 was volunteer. So already we've got a high volume of people that we can reach out to and give them a consideration, and they go through what's called the Career Transition Partnership, which is a workshop effectively within the sort of the last year, because their termination period is effectively 12 months. So they give notice that they're leaving and they have a 12-month period where they have to go through workshops and stuff to start to understand the civilian way of life. So we could reach out to that. We could raise our awareness profile. And, we've got to look at building control recruitment. It's a bit nuanced, isn't it? In the sense that we've got registered building control approvers, and then we've also got local authority. We've just seen great investment in local authority with nearly £20 million, and they've set up the LABC Academy. And I think now they're touching on 150 trainees, whereas a registered building control approver, their recruitment of trainees might be slightly different, because each building control body is different in their approach to training and their needs at that time. But one thing we can all agree on is awareness, and we can all deliver that, either an RBCA or local authority. And the simple thing is just attending these CTPs. We can do an engagement day. We could do where they have sort of engagement days. We could go put stand up, and it's not necessarily promoting the private or the local authority. It's about promoting building control. It's about promoting the profession and getting more people into that profession. So I think straight away raising awareness is one of them. I think another one is potentially we've got to look at training. So, for example, colleges, universities, and things like that. Are they making building control awareness? Are they bringing it to the forefront? When I started out, and thanks to David Barley, he helped me get on my degree course of building surveying. And as I went through it, I think I had one module on building control. And two of the gentlemen that I was on the course with, they didn't really know much about building control, but they've now actually transitioned into building control, both of them working for a registered building control approver. But initially, they never set out to be in building control. They heard of building surveying. We've heard of quantity surveying, but they never actually heard of building control. So I think they're two key blockers that I think we can change as a profession, whether that be through APCA, whether that be through the Association of Registered Building Inspectors, whether that be an RBCA individually or the local authority. We have that power and we can change that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that obviously LABC do a lot of different marketing, whether ABCA may be open for doing some marketing, but I think it is a missed opportunity of a lot of different types of people, especially service leavers, who are going to have that discipline, which is needed in our industry to develop into really good building control surveyors. You mentioned that you had two people on your course that were doing building surveying and hadn't really considered building control. Building control was never something that I set out to do myself. Building surveying is a course I did, and it was only down to an email from Cabe about the LABC cohort, and that's how I fell into it. So I think there definitely is a need for awareness, like you've said. Some marketing needs to be done. If government are funding for trainees, could some funding be set aside for putting, a big advert out there to tell people that this is a career, which is a good career? I love what I do. A lot of people I work with love what I do, and what they do, should I say. I think it is a good career with some really good opportunities to have.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I think military people, as I've already said, are so suited to the role. I mean, you've got to look at the skills that they can transition across from. I mean, they already understand risk. They already understand safety and compliance because of the role that they do. For example, if you took a fire safety officer who effectively runs the ranges, he has to deal with joint service publication, JSPs, which are the guidance. And effectively, if you looked at a JSP, and I've got an example, the JSP 405, it's actually called JSP 405 Volume 1. Well, that's very similar to an approved document Volume 1. If we looked at approved document L Volume 1, the language in it is very similar. And then they have the forms. We can see the mindset already supports building safety or safety in general, and regulatory decision making effectively. And I think they also really perform well under pressure. I think that's something that most military people are attuned to. They're trained to remain calm in situations and have objective and be objective in challenging situations. I think that's important as an RBI, and choosing the hard right over the easy wrong effectively, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you've hit the nail quite hard on some really important things like the transferable skills and having building control as a second career. But what what really I think maybe the listeners would like to know as well from you, from your point, do you feel that this profession offers that sense of purpose many service leavers look for after leaving the forces?
Yeah, 100%. It's, as again, going back to what I said earlier, it's about that mission. What's the mission? The mission at the end of the day is to ensure buildings are built to the building regulations and they're safe for people. No, that's no different to our mission when we were back in the military. And when you really cling on to that purpose, it makes it worthwhile. The role is worthwhile every day. Getting up in the morning, going out on site, doing your plan check-in, speaking to the duty holders, it's a correlation to me that there's the same. It's the mission at the end of the day. And I think that sense of purpose really will suit the military service leavers.
Do you think the journey, like from when you've left up until where you are today, that journey, obviously you've explained at the beginning, and you've given us that brief that you've moved through different stages and attended a few courses until you got to where you are. Would you say that journey was? I would assume it wasn't easy, but would you say that that journey was seamless and it had like a consistent flow of maybe progression and transition from this to that? So the reason I'm asking that question is for people maybe listening to your journey and that experience that you've gained throughout this journey, for it to be something that they would be intrigued to know more about or maybe take the leap to get into. How did that journey feel? Was it hard? Was it seamless? Was the flow absorbed in a way that you say to yourself, yeah, this is something I can do? Because I think as well that the industry, not just service leavers we would want to attract, I think we would want to attract maybe other professionals within
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
industry itself, like maybe architects that want to transition into building control, maybe structural engineers that want to transition into building control, maybe site managers. So that journey, I think, would be applicable. I think that journey, yes, would be applicable to all these different professions or people from different sectors or industries that would really say to themselves one day, right, well, I think I want to, because I have a lot of people that approach me. Like, I obviously came to building control like Jack. I never assigned to become a building control inspector, like yourself as well. You started as a military young boy at 16 years old. Uh, my by education, I studied architectural engineering, so I came from architectural background and then transitioned into building control. But yeah, I'd like you to maybe elaborate a little bit more about that journey and how did you find it? I'm not going to say how easy or how hard was it, but how did you find it?
I think initially the journey from the start, I did find hard initially. As I said, you've got to remember, I'm going from the military background straight into a civilian environment. Although I had these skills that I transferred across, getting used to understanding regulations and how they're interpreted was certainly something difficult. I think military, I was very used to black and white. This says this, you do that, you know. Whereas sometimes regulations can be open to interpretation, and I think I found that very difficult to get in my head. You could have a regulation or something, and you can get 6 different answers from 6 different people, and that was just
True,
mind blowing.
very
It was
true.
like, oh my god, you know. So I think initially that I found very difficult. But then having the discipline and the perseverance already drilled into me was what allowed me to keep moving forward. What I did find easy though was the structure of being at, right, I've got to be on site at this time. This is what I need to look at, get my site report done, get my plan checking done. The project management around it, I found easier because that's what I was already doing, within the military. And I found that transition a lot simpler. But initially, yeah, the understanding of the regulations and, how to apply them, I found quite difficult at the beginning. But my perseverance and just keep driving forward and learning. I think that's one thing military people, they want to learn. They want to, thirst for knowledge. I think so important as an RBI. You need to keep learning. You need to keep going on. And I think that sort of helped the transition as well, because I wanted to know, I wanted to learn off people. Well, how do you do this? Well, what's this situation? And being adaptable as well. I mean, look at the changes that have happened over the last 5 years. It's been immense, and having the resilience to keep going on and being able to I think there's one saying, I remember commanding officer, being comfortable with chaos. I still remember that today. Being comfortable with the changing scenarios, because it's going to keep evolving, and building control is going to keep evolving like anything. But having the ability to adapt to that, and for the right reasons. Building control is changing for the right reasons. So I think that was inbred from the military as well.
Do you think that having family members in the industry has been a bit of an easier transition for you, with someone to sort of lean on, where, say, if a service leaver came in, do you think it may be a bit more daunting for them to not sort of have that, maybe a bit of a backup to sort of go and bounce ideas off? Do you think that's a bit of a benefit?
Yeah, 100%. We can't, having both my brother-in-law and father-in-law in it, you can go back and ask them questions, can't you? And, well, what do you think I should do, with this? And it has made it 100% easier, without a shadow of a doubt. But we need to perhaps move them, I think there is a perception of complex path, perhaps, and we need to remove that perception. People, looking at the competency and the BSR requirements, are they thinking perhaps that looks intimidating? Maybe we need to move that perception away. People assume that you need to have a a real heavy technical understanding straight away. Well, that's not the case, because you've got to learn it. You've got to walk before you can run. And I think pathways as well, perhaps pathways need to be a lot clearer in how we take a trainee from class 1, to class 2, to class 3, if they wish to go that far. And by removing that perception, I think that would make it easier for them to look at it and go, oh yeah, that looks like a great career path for me. And I think supervision is so important now. In the military, I was always supervised, as in I was always learning off people. Fortunately, I think most of us agree that there is an aging workforce. We have lost experience through the first tranche of the registration process, but we have a chance here. We have a chance to grab it and really bring, skilled people into the profession, and train them up, so that for example, in 5 to 10 years time, we have that experience, and then we've got that nice constant circular. People are coming in, they're learning from the experience, they retire, and then the next people are spreading their knowledge onto the next trainees. So I think at this moment in time, we've got some work to do, but it's such a chance for us, such a positive chance.
Yeah, I imagine it can be very confusing for a trainee initially coming in, and you've got your BIC off, you've got your restricted functions activities, you've got your primary legislation, your secondary legislation, your approved documents, your British standards. Your mind can be blown immediately. And then with the BSR, there's qualifications. You pass your qualification, does that mean you're registered? Making that more clear for someone coming straight into the industry, of your level 4 qualification doesn't mean you're now competent. Your class 2 registration and exam or interview pathway, that will then have your competency upgraded. I think there are a lot of ways we can simplify things to make it a lot less daunting for people coming in, so they can see, right, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you can get there to be in that position where you are deemed a competent surveyor under the registration.
Well, that goes back to awareness, doesn't it? Effectively, we've got to make them aware. And I think, going back to your question, Nadir, about the other perfect people like architects and stuff, we have to raise that awareness for them and show them the path that they can take. And I look at the registration as like learning to drive effectively. You're taught to drive, and you pass your test, but you actually don't start really learning to drive until you go through the experience, like getting on a motorway. You become better at driving as time goes on, don't you? You get put into situations when you're out on the road. So, there are things that we need to make people aware of.
It's true. It's true. You can qualify someone today. You can give someone a driving license today, but
Yeah,
that doesn't mean they can travel across Europe, for example.
yeah,
They
exactly.
have a driving license and they could do so, but it will take a long time for them to build up that confidence to start driving longer distance or difficult routes. And that's exactly translated in, that's a perfect example, to be fair, Aaron. It's translated into the journey within building control. It takes, you can get a registration today, but it takes years to get to that level of competence to say, well, I I have a way of reading the legislation, understanding the interpretations, and all of these things. So it was a really good example, David. Thank you. The other thing I think I wanted to ask you, because obviously you were in the military, and did before people decided to leave, or before the time has come to leave, did the military propose any kind of alternative careers once people leave the service? They have, like, for example, I think if they had anything that they can propose, or do they have maybe some kind of, I wouldn't say events, but maybe to invite external sectors to come and maybe show service leavers these are the alternative careers for you outside the service. Did that happen, or you just get the notice when you're leaving, and then you have to find out what to do next?
No, that's a really good question. Normally, termination of engagement of your contract tends to be 12 months. So you would sign off effectively, and then you would have 12-month period where you would still be working, but then you'd have to go through what's called the Career Transition Partnership, and we'll CTP. And basically, that is the first step, and that's just a workshop. And you know, I mean, I've been out over a decade, well, close to a decade now, so it might be slightly different now. But when I went through it, it was more about how to write a CV, how to prepare for an interview. But within there were jobs, recruiting, but a lot of them were facilities management, health and safety, site management, and site management was pushed quite heavily.
Okay.
BT, OpenReach, because obviously there's a lot of telecommunications within the military.
Yeah.
So, they were pushed heavily. You also had career days where big businesses would come and put a stand together, and they would promote, maybe they would have like an apprenticeship scheme, or they would have like a fast track for military personnel. So there were always that. But one thing, building control was never there. I never seen building control. The only construction sort of sector I seen was site management.
Wow.
Site management is definitely pushed. So, I mean, going back to awareness, that's something I feel we could, as a profession, we could
Yeah.
engage with. And I think that applies to anybody, wanting to jump from a certain career path. We need to be there. We need to promote, and it has to be us. It has to be building control that does it. We can't rely on anybody else. We've got to do it ourselves. So, I mean, yeah,
Quite clearly is a missed opportunity if they are
absolutely.
having these types of events for leavers to start integrating back into civilian life, and they're bringing in different types of careers. We should get ourselves to the forefront. We know that service leaders can definitely be the type of people that will thrive in this industry.
100%.
We definitely look at.
Yeah, I mean, a while ago, myself and a couple of others within building control, we actually did a presentation at a CTP. And we delivered a presentation about building control, what the role entailed, and it was all different people. It wasn't just my business. There were other businesses there, because at the end of the day, what we want to see is more people in building control. So it can be a cross-party a mission almost, getting that people in. So we've done it, and when you actually spoke to the lady that set it all up, she was like, well, what's building control? I've never heard of it before. I've heard of planning. I know what a planning officer is, but I don't know what building control is. So it's building that awareness, I think, is key for me.
So you think it's from what you're saying, there is these career days that the military sets up, obviously at this CTP time. I think a lot of listeners will now realize that some of them, it may be the first time they hear that the option for them to go actually and exhibit in one of these career days. So that is obviously something very I never knew about it. It's the first time now I hear of it, and I don't know if Jack have heard about it before or not. But obviously that is a very insightful information here from you, and I'm sure that how how would people know about these career days? How would companies out there, how would building how does would the building control community, whether it's LA, I'm sure LABC may already know how,
Yeah.
but what about RBCAs? Is it something that we can share with the APCA, the Association of Building Control Approvers, that to have maybe a point of contact with the MOD, the Ministry of Defense, to maybe have these announcements of where these career days take place, so people get encouraged to go and exhibit and talk about the career, and it could be a viable option for service leavers like it was for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first step is effectively just reaching out to their local CTP office. That's what we did. There's one, I'm, based in Richmond, and we've got Catchick Garrison, and there's a CTP there. So we just reached out to the person there who was the liaison, and just said, look, we're starting to see a shortage of registered building inspectors, and we really want to sort of push the profession and get new talent into it. And we put a presentation together, and we delivered that presentation. And there's CTP across the country, but there's not just CTP. There is other private firms that deliver career days to the military, and there's plenty of stuff on LinkedIn you can look through. I think there's one called Forces Transition Program or something, and they do a lot of career days. So effectively, it's just about reaching out and promoting building control, which I think is only a positive step. And the point that Jack makes about the missed opportunity, we can change that quite easily.
So it's not something that they announce, it's something that people have to go and approach.
Yeah, you will need to reach out, and because they'll obviously have the dates and the timings for when they do these career days. But it's as simply as just reaching out. That's all it takes.
I imagine they would be quite open to having different types of companies doing these talks at the career days. It's not going to be a case of we don't sort of need that, or they're quite open for anybody to be involved, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. But the first thing they're going to be concerned about, well, is it going to be a right fit for the military? Is it going to be the right fit for service leavers? And I think, we've already talked about, military people are perfect. They're quick learners, they're reliable, professional, and the mission focused. So, and the role of building control, that's what we need for a good RBI, in my view. So straight away, the role already suits military personnel. So I think that answers that one pretty quickly. And then it's ensuring that we have that opportunity for people. I think that's sometimes could be perhaps a blocker. We've already spoke about the nuance of recruitment. Local authority is going to be slightly different to an RBTA. So it's just ensuring we give them that opportunity too.
Yeah, do they sort of bring in any recruitment agencies or anything like that to maybe get you signed up with?
To be honest, I don't know on that one. That's a question I probably don't know. That's probably something that we'd probably have to research a little bit more. But again, I think most of it, if you follow LinkedIn a lot, or if you're quite active, you'll see a lot of ex-service military people already putting a post about, I'm leaving the service in the next 6 months. I don't know where to go. And I try and comment, and just a lot of them are like, well, I've got this qualification. I've got my IOS, NEBOSH, I want to get into the construction sector, but I don't know what to do. And just commenting on posts like that, giving them an option. I did it recently. Someone who wants to get in construction but wasn't sure where he wanted to go, and put on there, give building control a try. Here's an article that I've wrote recently. Have a look at building control. Reach out to your local building control body, whether that be local authority or an RBCA, and see what opportunities they have.
Yeah, I've found that a lot of service leavers have signed up to the SAVA course, which is what I did my residential surveying. I was in a LinkedIn group there where you can do a bit of mentoring or sort of talk over the sort of process of Sava and how it works on assessment phase, which
Yeah.
I enjoyed Sava. I think it's a good course to be able to do your part-time learning, so you can have your sort of career in the background and then learn in your own time. But I found that seems to be a big one for service leavers as well. So surveying seems to be a good role in general for the military.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, going back to when I was at my university, most people know building surveying, don't they? They know what constitutes surveying, but they've never heard of building control. So I think surveying, again, it's something that military are well suited to the skills that they have and they've developed. We've got the Royal Engineers, and they do literally have surveyors within the Royal Engineers. So again, that's a straightforward transition from the military into civilian life. And it's silly that we're not promoting it more with them.
Aaron, when you went to one of these is it CTP, Career Transition
CTP,
Period? CTP. You said you've attended one of them. Obviously, you've had conversations with people there, like people that are transitioning to leave. Did any of the conversations that you've had with those people, did they have any misconception about the industry or about building control as a career? Did how many already knew about it? How many already maybe considered it, and how many didn't know about it or knew about it but had some misconceptions on it, or maybe thought, maybe no, that's not the right one for me, and then you've told them about your own journey?
yeah. No, it's a really good question, because I think you know that's actually, it could potentially be another blocker that we need to sort of clear. I mean, some people, when I discussed them, they think there was a lot of paperwork, a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy within the role, and I think that's not entirely correct, is it? So I think it's educating them to understand what the role actually entails. And it's going back to that purpose again that we spoke about. What is the purpose of building control? I think, once they understand that purpose of what we're here to do, and why the role of the RBI is so important and why it matters in everyday life, I think, straight away they're like, latch on, brilliant. That's exactly what I've just been doing for the last 22 odd years. And that transition across is just effectively changing one half to another, isn't it? And then adapting their skills to fit that role.
What advice would you give to any service leaders who may be listening? Hopefully they are. As many people as possible is always good. What advice would you give them about getting into the profession, and what they should really start getting the head around first?
I think the first thing is understanding what the role is. As you said, we've got so much bick off. We've got the code of conduct. So really understanding what the everyday role, of building control is. I mean, they've got that year transition, so reaching out to a building control body, asking, because they do get the option to have some leave where they can actually go and do some work experience. So using that work experience, reaching out to their local building control body and saying, well, actually, can I come and see what your actual role is day to day? So straight away, they've been exposed to it and understanding it. So once they've then understood the role and what they need to do, then it's looking at the actual career path. Well, what do they need to do? What qualifications? Each military person, when they leave, they get what's called LCAS credits, and effectively it's money. I think when I left, it was up to £5,000, and they could use that money to actually do a qualification. So straight away, we already have things like, we've got degrees, apprenticeships. We've got, I think, is it University of Wolverhampton do a building control surveying degree. We've got the University of the Built Environment, they do a degree. We've got Total Training Development that do an MVQs. So they could then look at what MVQ they could choose to start and carry it on. And then ultimately, it's deciding which way they want to go. Is it local authority? Is it, private building control? But at the end of the day, to me, what matters is that we get more people into this sector, we get more talent into this sector, and service leavers certainly bring that.
Yeah. So when they are ready to join the industry, they do have the likes of LABC, BCCA, CAVE, University of Wolverhampton,
Yeah.
and University of Built Environment. They will be able to give guidance on what would be the best course for them to start with and help them get their career started as well. So they won't just be going in blind. They will have support from these different types of providers into how they're going to progress through these courses. So it's nothing to be concerned about. It can be quite a nice transition with support from an employer and from the actual qualification providers as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the transition is 12, as I said, it's 12 months. That work experience alone is going to help them, calm them and sort of put them at ease, because a lot of people, it is daunting when you finally put your name on that dotted line to say that's it. I'm now leaving. Remember, I actually asked for early termination, so I could get out quicker within the 12 months. And I sat in my office, and I remember my back sergeant major walked through the door and went, your request has been approved, and my face just went white, because I was like, oh my god, I'm now going to become a civilian. I'm leaving behind, something that I've known since I was 16. Yeah, it can be daunting, but as you quite rightly say there, Jack, using the leave, talking to building control bodies, looking at the qualifications, it's going to make that transition a lot easier.
Wow. How long did you stay in the service?
So I was just under 14 years in total. I did 2 years for free because I joined at 16, and obviously adult service doesn't start till you're 18. So yeah, unfortunately, we had when I joined, we were obviously at the height of operations within Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think I spent nearly 5 years on rotation effectively. My first deployment was to Iraq, and then when I got back, within sort of 9 months, I was then deployed to Afghan on Herrick 7. Came back and then deployed to Herrick 11, and then the last deployment was to Herrick 20. But a lot of people forget that you see people deploy, which is tends to be 6 months long, but before that you've got the training. The training can be anything between 6 months to a year long, and that's been away from your families because you've got to obviously train ready to deploy, and you know war changes all the time, things adapt quickly, so you've got to learn new things. So training is constant, so you're away from your family more. So effectively, you say you're away for 6 months, but actually you could be away for nearly a year. And that has a huge impact, on your life. I had 2 young kids, and I wasn't really seeing them. So I thought at that point it was like I need to I need to spend time with my family, and yeah.
I was going to ask you a question. My next question was, what has been the most rewarding part of becoming a registered building inspector? And I'm sure the most rewarding one is spending more time with your kids. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah. I better say that because my wife might listen.
No, when you said it, I was like, that question is already answered there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think, but for me as well, it's going through the SICA process and seeing Alpha choose its license. That was an experience. Your previous Andy Crooks was on one of the panels, at the time, so that was an experience in itself. And being able to achieve something like that was good. And then the registration process as well. I think, we can all admit it. At first it was a bit daunting. Concern. I think some imposter syndrome in sometimes there, thinking, am I good enough? Am I going to pass? I had a positive experience with it. I think it's right that we are doing this. I think it's right that we are being held accountable as RBIs, and we're trying to improve our competence. So I was proud of that as well. I think sometimes we're negative, aren't we? Building control, we can be quite negative. Negativity breeds negativity, but ultimately we've got to look at what we've achieved. Things have changed so much. Like I said, in the last 5 years, I've seen huge change in the industry, and there's only going to be more. But we can adapt to it, and and at the end of the day, the purpose. What's the purpose? Our purpose is to make buildings safe, and I think that's something worthwhile, absolutely worthwhile.
It shows how much passion you've got for the profession.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and again, that stemmed from the military. selfless
Yeah.
commitment and respect for others. It's bred into you to, and I think I follow a guy called Nick Bear. He's quite inspiring guy, and it's like be all in what you're doing.
With this job, you have to be committed to what you're doing.
Correct.
Things change all the time. You need to stay on top of your game. You can't join this industry half-hearted. You've got to live it. I know my wife is probably bored of me talking about building control because it's my day job. It's now a podcast job, which I'll do bits of the weekend. Me and Nathan are always talking to each other, seeing what we should be doing next. But it's one of those where, for me, I have to be fully immersed in something. And this is a job that I feel like I am making a difference. And I think all RBIs make a difference. We do our job as well as we can, again, to keep people safe in and around buildings. That is what it's about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think you look at like the values and standards of the military. I think some of the standards is lawful, adhering to the laws at all times. That's what we need to do as RBIs. Acceptable behaviour, behaving in a way that's appropriate for the military, and then professional, conducting oneself, with a high degree of professionalism expected. That's no different to an RBI. That's what we have to do. We have to act like that. So the skills, the knowledge, the experience, behaviour skills, the transition, again, it's just taking that helmet off, that military helmet, and putting that hard hat on. And we've already learned a lot through the military, and all we're doing is taking it from a military context and now putting it into a civilian context.
So you would say it's pretty much almost identical or very aligned?
I won't say it's identical. Obviously, there's definitely change, different.
Aligned in a way, yeah.
Yeah. Aligned is definitely the right word. I think certainly aligned. You've got to look at the code of conduct for RBIs, and I think you've got the principles, haven't you? Which act with honesty, act with integrity. Well, integrity is a value that the military have to have. And it's choosing the hard right over the easy wrong, as Nick Bear says. It's important. When no one's looking, you're doing the right thing.
I think everything we've been over today is very relevant, very important for people to hear, especially service leavers or other people that are looking at changing careers and really don't know what they want to do. This industry, building control, we need people, we want people, and we want committed people. And I think what you've discussed with us today has opened my eyes quite a bit on what opportunities we are missing in bringing in what could be really good people into the industry. And
100%.
I'm looking forward to this getting put out there, and hopefully that will make a bit of a difference, and we can start getting some more service leavers brought into the industry. Yeah,
definitely. I think the one thing from me as well, probably the final thing from me, is leadership. We have, and I'm starting to see, we are seeing it now. We've got people that are really starting to take the lead in building control and be leaders. But that's bred into the military to be leaders, to put that hand up and say, this is the way, follow me. And I think that's something the military service leavers can bring with them as well. And I think it's more important now than ever that we have that leadership, we have that direction, and coming together as a profession. And we need leaders, we need people to show us the way.
Would you say that that's the key message you want veterans and the wider sector to take away from your story today? I'd feel that you might have a little bit more to add to that message.
I think the message for me is a call to action. It really is raising that awareness that building control is a profession for service leavers. It is the right profession. Service leavers, they bring discipline, they bring integrity, risk awareness, leadership, and ultimately, as I've said many times already, that strong sense of purpose. And that's exactly what building control, is built on. And having them people come in will only make this industry stronger. It's going to take time. We all know that. We've got to deal with the experience that we've lost. But over time, we're only going to get better and we're only going to get stronger. And the military service personnel can add to that, and we can make this sector much better.
Jack,
Thank you for joining us today. It's been an eye-opener and a pleasure. And again, thank you for your service. And we'll be looking forward to getting this one put out.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, guys. And just, I think, a big shout out to you too, for having this platform and allowing, RBIs and building control to finally have good conversations.
I think without the initiative from Jack, obviously at the start, and I thank Jack obviously for inviting me to co-host with him. I think without this, I learned a lot of things today as well, and I think many people that would be listening to this and the previous episodes and the future coming ones, there's a lot out there that we need to start sharing so people can get to know what are the possibilities that are out there. Aaron, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you again at some point, but for now, I think it's been an absolute pleasure and it's been brilliant. And thank you for your time. Thank you for the insights. And I reiterate after Jack again, thank you for your service to this country and the people of this country.
Thank you. Cheers for your time, gents.